The Empire in Star Wars was famous for its superweapons, as we first saw in a little-known documentary called The Star Wars, which introduced the Death Star, and then again in Return of the Jedi, which introduced a second Death Star. But particularly throughout the 90s, as Bantam Spectra and Dark Horse expanded the stories beyond the Battle of Endor, in the comics and books respectively, we got introduced to a variety of additional superweapons employed by the Empire, some of which even began development under Palpatine's rule, even if they weren't deployed until later. These, mostly developed as a central conflict point for the plot of a specific book or comic, were sometimes very similar to the Death Star. For example, there's the Death Star prototype, which was a Death Star prototype, then there's the Hutt superweapon, the Darksaber, which was designed in part by one of the Death Star's chief engineers, and was basically just a super laser that was in a long tube. There were also more novel, but still planet-destroying weapons like the Sun Crusher, which was a fighter-sized craft which deployed torpedoes that could destabilize a sun, wiping out not just a planet but an entire system, and which also had indestructible armor. The Dark Empire comics introduced the Galaxy Gun, which could shoot projectiles across the galaxy to destroy planets, along with introducing the planet-eating World Devastators and the mini-super laser-equipped Eclipse 1 and Eclipse 2. So there was no shortage of superweapons used by the Empire. But ultimately, they did little to stop the New Republic as it expanded over the decade or so following the Battle of Endor, whittling the Empire down to a fraction of the galaxy. But the Empire's usage of these superweapons did have an unintended side effect. Their defeat may actually have radicalized parts of the Empire even more, pushing them to continue to fight longer. Peace was ultimately made between the two warring factions in 19 ABY with the Pelion-Gavrisson Treaty, named for the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Military, Grand Admiral Gilad Pelion, and the then Chief of State of the New Republic, a Calibop named Ponk Gavrisson. I don't expect anyone to know what I mean when I say he was a Calibop, but it's still a fun word to say, Calibop. During the New Jedi Order series, set from 25 to 29 ABY and covering the invasion of the Star Wars galaxy by the extragalactic Yuuzhan Vong, the Imperial Remnant and New Republic began cooperating, ultimately coming together under the banner of the Galactic Alliance, merging them more or less into one political entity. The Imperial Moffs and much of the government of the New Republic were originally quite opposed to this, which is why it took until near the end of the war to really establish this cooperation. But at the beginning of the war, the battles of Garki and Ithor saw significant cooperation undergone at the urging of the militaries of both groups, particularly urging by Gilad Pelion and New Republic Admiral Trace Crefay. Ithor was particularly important in this, as it represented the first truly coordinated attempt to hold off the Yuuzhan Vong, and in its lead-up, representatives from both the New Republic and Imperial government arrived for some meetings in the system. During these meetings, we hear New Republic Chief of State Borsk Felia reveal one of the big issues which seems to undermine potential trust between the New Republic and the Empire. He says, quote, "You should know, Admiral, that we have no access to any of the Empire's old superweapons. Reports of their destruction are true, no matter what rumors to the contrary still circulate," end quote. He's basically bringing this up primarily in the context of the materials available to each group, but the idea that there are rumors circulating that the New Republic held on to some of them are a pretty interesting possibility. And earlier in the book, when we see Pelion talking to the Moff Council about cooperating with the Empire, they all think the request for Imperial help from the New Republic to fight the Yuuzhan Vong is an attempt to lure the Imperial fleets away from Imperial territory so that they could come in and take over what remained of the Empire. And the idea that the New Republic might be hiding some of their old superweapons probably only exacerbated those fears. If the Empire thought the New Republic still had them, and was ever planning to deploy them, it would explain why there was a kind of existential fear that if the New Republic was allowed to continue to govern the galaxy, eventually they would potentially turn those weapons against the Empire, ending their ability to like this video and subscribe for more. This was, of course, an unfounded fear, mostly. There are a few situations where you can start to see why the Empire might have believed it, and I want to talk about two of them. Firstly, the New Republic did capture at least one of the World Devastators deployed by the Empire in Dark Empire. These mostly automated behemoths built themselves up over time by integrating material they consumed from either other ships or worlds. But despite their raw power, they were primarily defeated by R2-D2 injecting some viruses, making them all turn on and essentially eat each other. So it's not surprising that a few would have ended up in the New Republic's hands, and we see one of them with a New Republic fleet in Dark Empire too. These could be hugely damaging in the right situation, but while it's probably not one of the ones the Empire was mostly worried about the New Republic having, the idea of one being sent out against Imperial worlds would certainly be cause for some level of concern. The ones we know the New Republic had were primarily used for fleet support and reconstruction projects by the New Republic according to the Essential Guide to Warfare, but regardless, the Empire needn't have worried. Also, according to the Essential Guide to Warfare, the use of these former Imperial superweapons, which had been deployed against at least Mon Calamari by the Empire, caused such a public outcry they were scrapped in 12 ABY within a year or two of their original capture. The bigger concern with the Empire probably lay with the Sun Crusher. This is probably my least favorite superweapon in all of Star Wars because of just how ridiculously overpowered it is. The Zeiston is close, being a small, indestructible fighter craft with a system-destroying resonance torpedo. This craft was stolen from the secret weapons development station in the Maw by Han Solo, Chewbacca, and future Jedi Master Kyp Durron, all of whom had escaped from a prison on Kessel. With no obvious way to destroy the Sun Crusher, it was sent directly into the gas giant Yavin, where it was believed to be at least inaccessible to all. Kyp Durron also went to Yavin, but instead of being ejected into the planet, which, I don't know, maybe that would have worked out better for people, he was sent to Luke's Jedi Academy. And thanks in no small part to his anger at the Empire, who he believed were responsible for the death of his brother, he was able to be possessed by the long-dead Sith Lord Exar Kun, which inhabited one of the nearby Massassi temples. Kyp and Exar Kun managed to use the Force to pull the Sun Crusher out of Yavin, and Kyp flew it to the Imperial Academy world Karita, which remained under Imperial control. As an act of revenge against the Empire, he detonated the system's sun, dooming the planet only to find out his brother was in fact not just alive, but on the planet Karita. The realization that he had now actually killed his brother, along with the simultaneous destruction of Exar Kun's spirit on Yavin, made Kyp surrender to Han in the Millennium Falcon. And in the decades to follow, both in and out of universe, characters and fans alike have debated just how responsible Kyp was for his actions. Partially as an act of redemption, Kyp sent the terrible weapon into the black holes of the Maw, where it would be far less retrievable than in a gas giant. But if we think about it, the Empire didn't really know this. From their perspective, the Sun Crusher was captured and used against Karita, an Imperial system, by someone who went on to become a member of the Jedi Council with seemingly no real consequences, which seems like more than enough to fuel conspiracies of the New Republic planning to brutally destroy their worlds, or at least endorsing the destruction of their worlds among Imperial hardliners. Kyp destroyed the Sun Crusher at the Battle of the Maw, with it being sucked into the black hole alongside a Death Star prototype, but I don't think most of the surviving Imperials from that battle actually knew the Sun Crusher was gone. I think most of them had left by that point, so they had every reason to believe it could still be out there, hidden in some New Republic storage facility, fueling fears of what the New Republic might be planning to do to them. Ultimately, it is the Imperials' fault for making these superweapons in the first place, but it's still a detail I thought was neat when rereading parts of the New Jedi Order recently. That's going to do it for today though. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Special thanks to Marmar for editing, and to the patrons and channel members whose support makes this channel possible.